Art Turner, and this is Sustainable Hawaii, live from the VERGE Hawaii Asia Pacific Clean Energy Summit at the Hilton Hawaiian Village in Waikiki. This summit has been produced for years, exploring innovative energy policies, models, technologies, and infrastructure necessary to bring us into the 21st century, weaning us off of fossil fuels. The summit has become even more important in the last 12 months because exactly 1 year ago today, Governor David Ige signed into law the first ever in the United States 100% renewable energy requirement that all electricity in Hawaii be produced by the year 2045 by renewable clean energy technologies. As a matter of fact, right now in the next room, Governor David Ige and the Assistant Secretary of the Navy, Mr. McGinn, Dennis McGinn, are signing an MOU between the state of Hawaii and the Department of the Navy to help us reach that 100% renewable goal. Today, in order to have us help us understand the importance of this summit and the MOU to all of the state, we have representatives here from Maui and Kauai. To Kelly King, to my left, you're right on the screen, is co-founder of Pacific Biodiesel Technology, and she's a resident of Hawaii. And next to her, of Maui, of Maui, of course. And next to her is Ben Sullivan, who's the Kauai County Sustainability and Energy Manager for the county. So I'd like to begin by asking you first, Ben, since you're our invalid today with your knee up on a chair. What does this summit mean for Kauai in particular and for reaching our 100% renewable energy goals?
Well, Kirsten, I think that's a great question. It is always important to come together as a state and to learn what other people are doing. A lot of us get into our daily grind and we just work away on projects. And if we don't take the time to look up and collaborate, then we really miss a lot of opportunities. So at a base level, this is, we're here to learn from others, to hear what's going on elsewhere, to learn where there may be opportunities to collaborate, where there may be points of leverage, things we can share about what we're doing as well, and organize and reinforce what the overall goals are. So where are we all trying to get collectively?
Kelly, what does it mean for you and for folks on Maui?
Well, even though I corrected you earlier, Kirsten, I feel like I can also speak for the Big Island because we have our larger operation on the Big Island. Personally, what I've seen is a bigger commitment from the Big Island for renewable energy because they've actually come out and their government has started using renewable fuels in their fleet. Ironically, even though we started on Maui, County Maui still hasn't gone on board with that. So to me, it's the kind of the furthest behind. And what we really need is more of a presence here, more people from Maui. I've actually just sat in the previous session and saw a couple of people from Maui who I know are concerned about renewable energy. And so for them to be able to listen to the messages that are being presented at some of these workshops. And also I want to say that at the last session that my colleague Ben Sullivan right here made some very good statements about the importance of carbon reduction, climate change. Folks are talking about energy security. And those are probably the three biggest issues with creating a goal for renewable energy for transportation.
I'm actually very glad that you mentioned this. The Transportation Summit that we just, all three of us emerged from, was an excellent opportunity for people from around Hawaii, from all of the islands who are working on transportation issues to come together to the reason for the summit here within this conference was to identify what a transportation goal for Hawaii should be. We have a goal for overall energy production in the electricity sector, but we don't for the transportation sector. And as you mentioned, it's very important to hear the input from the neighbor islands as well. What is the goal, Ben, for Kauai for transportation? Not to put you on the spot.
So for Kauai County operations, we have some very, very ambitious goals, and those goals are organized around a carbon reduction goal. And so when I speak of operations, I'm not speaking of island-wide. I'm talking about county government and how we use fossil fuels. Our goals are to reduce our carbon emissions to by 80% by 2023 as compared to a 2007 baseline. And we've got a very reasonable yet very aggressive path to achieve that. One of the key projects is utilizing the landfill gas out of our Keikaha landfill to power our bus. That gives us a big chunk of that transition in the fossil fuel side. Another key component of that is really relying on our partner KIUC, who's doing a tremendous job moving to renewable energy for the entire island.
That's Kauai Island Utility Cooperative.
Yes,
The
Kauai
utility
Island
for
Utility
Kauai.
Cooperative, that's correct. So that's a member-owned cooperative who is really doing very well in terms of implementing solar and other renewable energy technologies onto the grid. Their expectation, I believe, in latest conversations, that it'll be at about 70% by 2023. So our electricity is almost completely taken care of from the standpoint of our 80% goal. We've got a lot of work to do in ground transportation. Mayor Carvalho has led a very, very strong effort in the area of complete streets, and so that's kind of the idea of getting people to utilize the street infrastructure for more than just single occupancy vehicles. We also have to do some fuel switching and things like biodiesel that we've been talking to Kelly King and trying to figure out how we can bring biodiesel to Kauai as a key opportunity, but taking advantage of the resource we have at the landfill. Also electrifying one project in particular that I'm very excited about within the county, but I think has broader implications, is vehicle sharing. So we have a motor pool within the county where we share vehicles. What it ultimately amounts to is that we have much better data on how the vehicles are being used, and we also have much higher utilization rate. So the whole thing brings economy to the county fleet, and then in turn we can also track efficiency. And when we make new vehicle purchases, we can make sure that the most efficient vehicles possible for what's
Now,
needed.
I noticed that there is a whole track at the summit here today and tomorrow all about data analysis and big data gathering. How important is that? I mean, a lot of people get really bored by looking at, and I can't imagine sitting through a whole day of that kind of discussion, but why is that so important to reaching our 2045 100% renewable energy goal?
Well, let me just jump in here and say that even though data becomes boring sometimes when it's related to your pocketbook or to how you can run a business more efficiently, I think it becomes a lot more interesting. And folks in all sectors, with the water issues, with the land issues, with agriculture, people on Maui are screaming for more data. They want to know where we're at today, what the benchmarks will be for success, and how we're going to get there. But I do think it's very important that we just talked in the last session and got almost, I think, 100% consensus that we do need a transportation goal. That I'm not sure if it was said that it should be 100%, but I think that was on a lot of folks' minds. But getting from last year's legislative session when there were people saying we can't have a goal without a pathway, and some of us saying, well, how are we going to make a pathway if we don't have a goal? I think the discussion where this is headed is very enlightening and, to me, very promising.
Right. And there's a really great opportunity to follow the lead of a lot of very progressive cities and states and countries around the world who have said, hey, there is, in fact, a very definitive goal that we can utilize, and that is a science-based goal that says this is how much carbon reduction we need to hold to what is the internationally agreed Paris Accord, keep the world below a 2 degrees Celsius increase. So that is a very certain goal. The issue is how does it translate, which, again, there's plenty of data to provide that. But going back to your question of data, I would be the last person to ever say data is boring. And I think Kelly hit it right on the head. It's when it's relevant to you that it's interesting. Data on its own, just a data set, please leave me out of that conversation. But if it's a data set that I can utilize to gain insights, all of a sudden it's really, really magical.
And there are a lot of experts here from around the world, as a matter of fact. There's over 700 attendees, I understand, that come with the knowledge of not only what's important baseline data and what's important to collect, but how to collect that most efficiently and effectively and how to communicate that. So I was astounded at how many different companies there are at the exposition that are just dealing with metadata, how to process it, how to understand it, and how to share it. What are we doing within the state or within your counties to share data? Is the statewide dashboard rolling out and becoming accessible for the counties?
Well, I don't know about it your county, I think, is yards ahead of Maui County as far as collecting data and utilizing it. my biggest exposure, to be honest, my biggest exposure to relevant data has been at the Hawaii Energy Policy Forum, where the state has been gathering data to help, all the different counties move ahead. And then also, listening to people like Ben talk about what they're doing in their county to collect the data and to make it relevant to efficiency, to the economy of running a county. You can save money. How does it affect the average person? For me, when I first started in this industry, I used to collect data in my head just by sitting at a stoplight and looking around me and seeing, oh, there's 20 cars around me. Probably 90% of them are either vans, SUVs, or other giant vehicles with one person driving. And then you get down to the actual being able to quantify that with data. I think that's when you start thinking in those terms, then it becomes really relevant and important, because then you can take that quantified data and write a plan. That's what we need to do. Set the goal first, get the data, and then figure out how we're going to address the changes that we need to make.
How valuable do you think this conference is for those folks who are coming from outside of Hawaii? Because it seems to me that representation from outside of Hawaii and indeed internationally has grown. Is that your experience?
You want to answer that first?
Not being from outside Hawaii, it's a little tricky for me to answer, but I will speculate, if you'll allow it, and to say that, because more and more attention and resources are being focused on these goals, and more ambitious goals are being set, it obviously speaks to the market, and it speaks to people who say, hey, this is a good place to do business. We are very ambitious and very serious about our goals in the electricity sector. Imagine the additional amount of focus and attention we'd get if we had clear of a directive in the ground transportation, or even in the air transportation and tourism sector. What's to say that Hawaii can't lead the world in terms of green tourism? The tourism industry is essential to us, and we just got done with this session that really talked about how severely dependent we are on petroleum fuels to keep that going. We all know that. We all know that's not going to change overnight, and no one's proposing we want to do away with tourism. It would be an absurd thing to even talk about. However, we do need to get that data. We do need to quantify, and we do need to ask the hard questions. Where are the best places in our economy to reduce our carbon emissions? And what trade-offs should we make while caring for our key economic drivers?
Well, we know that aviation fuels account for almost a third of our carbon emissions in the state.
Right.
Correct? So if we're focusing on that and supporting the tourism industry at the same time, perhaps we can have a double benny in that we become just like we have become for electrical power, and the focus on Hawaii for learning about renewable energy technologies and policies and regulatory schemes that we have led with, that perhaps we can do that in the transportation sector, and people can fly here just to fly on Pacific biodiesel or jet fuel.
Well, and that's relevant to the ground transportation as well, because if people come to our state, which we want to be a 100% clean state, and can drive on 100% clean energy, can go to a hotel that's sustainable, that's not using styrofoam, that's using, that's recycling its water, that's using renewable fuel in its trucks or whatever. I think that's we want that to be the whole tourism experience. It should be this ecotourism experience. Right now, maybe they're coming to learn about the things we're saying we want to do. Some of them have been backed up by legislation, and some of them haven't. And there's a kind of a struggle every year at the state legislature to support the bills and the laws that will support our goals. And it's because we haven't sat down and said, in the different sectors, what is the pathway there? I personally have started working probably 5 years ago on trying to get mandates for biodiesel into the state, which are, to me, even some of the legislators said no-brainers, because they had an ethanol mandate. Biodiesel is made here, even though, there's no ethanol made here, but the ethanol mandate, biodiesel is made here, so it's supporting local jobs. It doesn't have to be shipped in from, far. We were making enough to cover 5% fairly easily on road. And it was just such a struggle because A, the petroleum industry is in the back door fighting it on that end. And B, there's this fear of adding another layer instead of the buy-in to let's support a local company, let's support local jobs, let's support energy that we don't have to ship in.
I'm really glad that you bring that up, because one of the things that I've noticed over the years with the Pacific Asia Energy Summit is that we host in Hawaii, is that we focus on the renewable energy technologies, and we focus on the metadata and the IT that goes with it. But we haven't seen tracks within the summit about land development, land preservation, conservation that is needed in order to be able to provide the feedstock for the biodiesel technologies that we've learned about. And I know that's something, Kelly, that you work very closely on in your community model, right? And
Right.
Your husband, Bob, just shared that, and I think it was eyebrows raised with many of the people who are not familiar with Hawaii, when he said, our model is really vertically integrated production of food, fuel, and energy. But he mentioned food first.
Right. Well, we know that food security is a huge issue. It's tied in with energy security, certainly. But our main goal in looking at agriculture and bringing that, I've struggled for 3 years, and every year I get at least one session into this conference on agriculture, and the Ag Energy Nexus came up this year without me actually having to insert it, so I'm happy to be on that panel. But
and when is that panel for our viewers?
Okay, tomorrow at 4 o'clock here, I'm not sure what.
Come to the Coral Room and you'll be able to find out where.
Find out, yes. It's going to be more of a discussion, so I'm really looking forward to that. But the Ag Energy Nexus is so important because it also brings in the other resources, like what are we doing with water supply? And the fact that on our island, it's pretty well talked about and discussed that we do have enough water, we just don't have the resources to capture it and get it to the right places. And so, they're like the land issues and the other issues that we need to fund or address at the legislature, we need to start looking at the infrastructure that's going to get us to that feedstock, that's going to get us to being able to produce the types of fuel and energy we need.
One of the things that they brought up in the Transportation Summit was one of the companies that's coming here from Arizona, and I think they're getting the name of it, Hawaii Renewable Energy Resources is the name of the company. He said that their difficulty in trying to provide feedstock for their technology is not having enough land accessible for them to grow their feedstock. I was very surprised to hear that. Is that the case on Kauai?
So again, we'll have some expertise, but I will comment that, land is always a challenge in that, there's always competing interests, and you're asking for long-term investments. So you have landowners who have to be very careful about the decisions they make and how they commit their limited resources to, going into the future. So I think that, although those are very obvious things to say, it's really challenging, and especially when you're looking at, ag versus development. Obviously, I think most of the landowners in Hawaii, thankfully, want to act in the best interest of the community where they can. But at times, it's much more profitable to develop. So how do you balance that, and how do you motivate the market to go in the direction you want to go as a society? How do we support agriculture so that we get the benefits we want?
Tell me, how do we do that, Kelly?
Well, one important issue is importing ag lands. So that's been extremely helpful because ag lands are designated IAL, and then they have to stay in ag. We're looking at the closure of HCNS from their sugar operations at the end of this year. They have
our last sugar operations
in the state of Hawaii. They have 36,000 acres in central Maui that they currently farm, or they did farm. They're closing them down as a harvest. And 27,000 of those acres are designated important ag land. So we do have land. It's a matter, and I'm sorry, but the landowners don't always step up in the best interest of the community. We're trying to get them to the table now, and some of it I understand. There's a little bit of fear because there's been such a big pushback against the cane burning and other things that HCNS has done, and so I understand that they're a little squeamish about getting to the table. But now is the time to step up, be more transparent, start talking to the community, because we know we have these ag lands. We know they're a resource for food and fuel for our island. Our island is terribly dependent. I think we have the highest percentage demand of petroleum in our electrical sector on Maui. Mm-hmm. We use a tremendous amount of diesel fuel that we import on that island. So we're going to have to look at, and I've been trying to get them to tell me, what is the backup? because I get this question from people and they go, can you supply enough biodiesel? And I would say, how much do you need? What is your backup plan? Like, if you had all the wind, solar, geothermal, whatever other kinds of energy you could have, and you're using your diesel generators as a backup with biodiesel, how many gallons would you need per year as a backup for, if something else didn't work, if you didn't have the wind or the rain or the sun? And I don't know that answer yet. I'm still working on it. And it's not that they're being obstinate. It's I think, they need to figure that out themselves.
It's evolving very,
it's
very
evolving.
rapidly.
But if we had a number today that we knew would even be less, then at least we could work towards that. It's like we were talking about, set a goal.
That's right.
And then maybe the goal will change. Will be wonderful. I mean, I think all these other technologies are great. We shouldn't need 50% renewable fuels in our electrical system. We should need way less of that as a backup, I'm hoping.
We do have so many companies at this summit coming to look at Hawaii for their investments. And indeed, some of them have already launched some new startups. Most of them, though, I noticed in the accelerator and other areas are more innovative technologies to manage our electrical systems. What is it going to take? And maybe I'll start with Ben to get
Actually, I'm sorry to cut in. We're actually going to go to a very quick commercial, and we're going to hear the answer when we come back.
Get the right mix between energy resource
Energy Man here.
development.
Make sure you tune in on my lunch hour every Friday from noon until 12:30 at least. Maybe I'll go a little long if you got good stuff to share with you. But we'll talk about energy, all kinds of energy. My favorite is hydrogen, and my other favorite is transportation and hydrogen. But we'll talk about all kinds of energy. Be with us every Friday at noon. Stan Energy Man. Aloha.
Aloha, I'm Kauai Lucas, host of Hawaii is My Mainland, here on Think Tech Hawaii every Friday afternoon at 3 p.m. Start your Pauhana weekend off with the show where I talk to people about issues pertinent to Hawaii. You can see my previous shows at my blog, kauilucas.com, and also on
We're reporting live from VERGE Hawaii. We're coming right back into a great conversation. And here we go.
Throw us out there to fund it all ourselves is really not even practical. So I get asked by the state legislature often, when are renewables not going to need subsidies anymore? And my answer is when you take them away from petroleum. If we don't have to compete against the most heavily subsidized industry in our country, we could be flying right now. We'd be way ahead of them, better price, better. Our infrastructure could be there, but we have to get into that infrastructure. And the great thing about biodiesel is it can live very nicely within the current fueling structure. Just
And that it's a drop-in fuel.
Just a drop-in. Just
station.
take the diesel. I mean, we did that with Midpack Petroleum at their Sand Island station, and we just they took the diesel fuel tank and they filled it with biodiesel, and now they supply biodiesel instead of diesel. And the first month they did that, their sales almost doubled, because we sent all the biodiesel customers to them.
Well, and it's interesting for me that in the Transportation Summit just now, we had this discussion about the importance of being able to maintain the infrastructure we have with the billions and billions it would take to replace it, rather use drop-in fuels. And yet the discussion continues about natural gas importation here. Wouldn't that require new infrastructure? I mean, we know that it's actually going to require quite a few millions, if not, I'm not sure what the total estimate is, but what is your feeling about that, and what do the people on Maui think of LNG as a substitute?
Well, it depends on which people you ask, but I think the general consensus among people who care about the environment is it's the same thing. I don't know if you're around when the whole Blue Earth proposal to import 100 million gallons of palm oil from Indonesia and make biodiesel in the state of Hawaii from oil that was grown on deforested lands. And that was, I think, in a fairly short period of time, and probably righteously so, stomped on and done away with, because we don't want to export our pollution in the name of having clean energy here. And to me, LNG, and especially with what we know now about the methane that comes out of the fracking, the issue is going to be, I believe, with the environmental community, that you're saving a few emissions here and maybe it's a little bit cheaper, but the cost to, and if we are buying into climate change and carbon reduction, the cost at the other end is not worth it. So, even if the private sector is paying for all that infrastructure, which I believe the governor made it clear they would have to, the cost to the environment would set us back so far that, even if we make these great strides in renewable energy, what we're doing in the meantime is one step forward, two steps back.
Well, then what about the argument that LNG is so much cleaner and so much cheaper that it will be much easier for the common folks in Hawaii to pay their energy bills, the average folks, I should say?
I think we have a lot of really positive things going on. So to talk about something as contentious as LNG, I think is counter to what we're here to do. Candidly, I think you can't answer that question unless you have the context with which you're making the decision. If our goal is to reduce, carbon emissions by 20 or 30, 40%, maybe it's a great solution. If our goal is to eliminate carbon emissions by 2070, which is really what the scientists are saying we need to do, then maybe we need to ask, is LNG on that path? And if it is, and it helps us, then let's use it. If it's not, then let's not. But we need to have the context of where we're trying to get, which is still lacking, I think, in the state of Hawaii. The electricity sector, we have a clear directive. I believe that has been driven by the economics of high-cost petroleum. But let's add the layer. Let's ask if we're serious about carbon. Are we part of this? Are we part of the global society who's saying, hey, let's keep everything below 2 degrees? Or do we get a pass because we're an island nation who needs to rely on others to reduce their emissions?
So I think we also have to look at our carbon reductions here. Really, carbon reductions if we're doing something, if it's causing something happening
Completely.
somewhere else.
It's got to be a life cycle analysis, and I'm not proposing that it doesn't.
Well, I would say that in the Transportation Summit we just exited and we did that wonderful smartphone survey, it was agreed on over 80% that the driver for our goal setting for the transportation sector in Hawaii should be carbon emissions and climate change. And so I think you've answered the question. And the question now is, what are our audience going to do about this? And how are you going to help us reach our decision about what the transportation goal for Hawaii should be? And we'll talk about that in a future session on Sustainable Hawaii. And I want to thank you both for exiting your important workshops to talk with us about this. And we look forward to a further discussion next Tuesday, 12 to 12:30 of important sustainability issues for Hawaii. Aloha.
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 Thank you, guys.
All right.